Hey, what is going on, everyone? You've got Jeb here from Burt Media and then Jim from Marshall Marketing. We wanted to use our video for the mid-year check-in to really showcase some of the research that we've done. We're super excited about some of the insights that we gained from polling a lot of New York State around dairy and some other questions that we came up with Cornell as well as NIAC, who helped collaborate on this survey. So Jim's going to walk us through our research results, and we'll share some of our learnings along the way.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me. And what we wanted to focus on today was all of the new research that we added to the survey. Again, just for all those who may be new to the process, and you, Jacob, the client has full access to this information. It's all software driven, which makes it highly customizable down to a county or down to a zip code level. We can look at this data very granular, or again, look at it full statewide. So we're going to take about an 800-foot view above this data today and focus on a couple key demographics. But then you let me know if anybody would like us to do a deeper dive into any of the other information that we have. So sorry for the eye test here, but this survey is representing the entire state, and we have 5 quotas. Simply, we are matching the population based on Census Bureau. So down in the lower left, you can see the 4 demographics that we're matching, key demographic areas. Most important for us would be income, age, and the diversity within the state. And then we're matching the population by county with the sample. Once the interview starts, we are completing about 70 different questions that include demographics, a lot of dairy information, and again, we've added a lot of new information. 1,000 interviews were completed. Probably took us 9,000 or 10,000 attempts. The survey was in the field June of this year. All of our demographics allow us to build lifestyle groups. Our company does a national survey. On this slide, you can see the blue number would be our national average for each one of these lifestyle groups. The red number would be the state of New York. So you can see where New York over-indexes in certain groups, like that top left-hand group. We're over-indexing that achiever. It's the most affluent resident of any marketplace or the state of New York, and nearly a quarter of the population falls into that achiever group. Any of the organizations connected to the DPO and you, Jacob, have access to just starting right here. Hey, I want to focus on achievers, or I want to go after secure mature. You can use this data starting right here on this slide. Here's a profile of all of the residents within the state. It's important that we look at this profile because in future profiles like this, I'll convert all the population figures that you see on this slide into indexes. We're using the 1,000 interviews or the residents that you see here on this slide as our base for the indexing. On this slide, a couple of key areas are demographic quotas, the age ranges, the income, and the diversity in the market are all on here. We're matching that population from Census Bureau data. And more important for me, bottom left-hand side, about a quarter of the population in the state I would consider to be a newcomer or a transitional consumer. In other words, they're new to their community, and they moved to that community within the last 5 years. So newcomers tend to be very active in entertaining themselves and their family. They cast a very wide net. So again, if somebody wanted us to just focus on the newcomers in the state, we can pull that data out and show you everything about them. We focus a lot on 2 areas, and today I'm going to reference those 2 areas. We ask how many kids are in the household, and then we ask those households how old those children are. So this slide is showing you those groups that we ask those homeowners or those residents that have kids living in the household. Our focus tends to be under 11 and 12 to 17, and you can see the vast population of those who have kids in a household have those 2 age ranges. I put the household pop for you on this slide. Do not hesitate to have us do any other deeper dives into what you're going to see within these homes. There is the homes that have kids under the age of 11 residing in the household. And again, to my earlier point, look at those indexes. Those high indexing areas tell us something about these homes. 52% more likely to be in that Hispanic population. Over a quarter of the population of kids under the age of 11 are in the Hispanic population. The family starter group, that's a young couple under the age of 50, living together, married, and they have kids under the age of 11. So we're going to have a huge index there. But if we're talking about content with this consumer, it's nearly 2 million consumers in the marketplace. we would want to look at making sure that our content matches some of these demographics. I'm going to include a couple of maps today. This one is actually showing you a process that we can give you an index. So when you look at an index, it's telling us where these consumers, households with kids under 11, are more likely to reside by county. All the red counties that you see are over-indexing. So we would consider them to be hot counties. If we were going to deploy any type of marketing campaigns and we wanted to hyper-target on this home, we would look at all of those red counties. The pink counties are warm counties, so they're kind of even indexed to over indexing. This slide does not say that those dark blue counties don't have households with kids under 11. They're just less likely to live in those counties. We also focus on generations. We talk a lot about the left-hand part of this slide. That's the Gen Zs, 18 to 24-year-olds. That's the adult population. Many research companies have Gen Z starting at age 14. So we're measuring 18 plus adults. So we're getting that adult population of Gen Zs. And then that next group, the millennials, 26 to 41-year-olds in the state. Very high population, good target for us to focus on, because you'll see in future slides the areas of opportunity within those two groups. So there's our Gen Zs. It's about 2 million population in the marketplace in the state, and you can see their indexes. I replaced age ranges with marital status. I thought that was an important demographic for us to look at, especially with these young consumers. And you can see that the vast majority of them are not married. They're either single or living together. And if you look at the bottom right, that drives that index where you see that singles population, which is the those who aren't married. It's over 60%, and they're 170% more likely to fall into that group. But look under that women OTG, that stands for on the go, the busiest person in the world. Although it's just 15%, they're 42% more likely to fall into that group. These are consumers who order online. These are consumers who are going to use the platforms that you, Jacob, and the team are utilizing, because they're time starved. They actually will spend more money if we save them time. And lastly, on this slide, look at the bottom left. Almost half of the population of Gen Zs are new to their community. So we know that if we're going to go after these consumers, we've got to tag them like a polar bear. We've got to make sure we know where they are, and the digital components that we are employing are really a good way for us to stay connected with this consumer. In our millennial population, nearly 5 million residents in the state. Bottom left, you can see almost 30% are newcomers. Their indexes are totally different. It's a family starter group now. Almost 40% fall into that family starter. And again, they're 164% more likely than the marketplace to fall into that lifestyle group. We also have really good indexes with that achiever group. So most affluent resident, but also those young couples that are kind of starting with their young kids in the household. This map is now converting that index into a population. So if you look at all of the green counties, and man, look at the New York area, right? That's where our highest population of millennials reside. All the way down to the orange or light orange that you see here, we have less than 10,000 of those residents. So again, mapping, if I were running that live in our software, you would be able to easily draw into a certain area or convert from a population to an index very easily. Do not hesitate to ask. Okay, let's get into some of our new exciting research. We asked this question. We have been asking consumers what types of dairy products they buy and what type they consume, but we've never really asked a frequency question. So you guys had kind of pushed back on me and said, hey, we really want to be able to break out consumers by frequency levels. So that's why we added this question. So you see that blank line there? We have multiple dairy products that we asked, and I'm going to show you all on the same slide what those frequency responses are. I started with the responses that you see, and I've highlighted gallon and carton of milk. And you could see that 1 all the way up to 4+. And what we're going to do is be able to give you frequency levels. If you think 4+ in a 2-week area of gallon carton milk is a high frequency, you may think 3+ is. We can group them together. We can profile that consumer. We can look at them demographically, and I could tell you where they live by county. We can put those consumers on a map, and then we can run it through the little bit of media information that we have. Bottom line is, now in all of these areas of dairy, you have frequency levels, which we can look at high frequency and low frequency, depending on who you want to target. If I take those who consume 4 or more in a 2-week period of time, and I look at specific groups, let's look at our households with kids under 11. That's the red line that you see here. If you look at households with kids 12 to 17, that's the green line that you see on here. And that thin black line would be our base. So that's the New York residents base percentage. So our goal here is to look at where they compare, and with every single group or every single product that you see here, we are over-indexing. And the one good thing that I like to see is like a hump or a lift in an area, and look at the carton and gallon of milk. We see a little bit of a bump there. And so we know that that would be a really good target for our milk consumption, because those households are more likely to buy at a higher frequency. Once somebody told us that they have a frequency of purchases, we then ask them where they purchase certain dairy products. And I've highlighted those 2 households again, under 11 in the household and 12 to 17-year-old in the household. Everything that you see red bold would be an over-index from the state average. This is a ranker that you're looking at, and you can see the top responses that we have. If you wanted to see multiple responses, we'd be more than happy to show that data to you. But look at the indexes with those households with younger kids. That 27 versus that 43, huge over-index that they're a Walmart shopper. The next question, we asked about habits over the past year. Again, we have a group of dairy products. We asked if you bought more, bought less, or bought the same amount in the past year. Here are our responses. Starting with yogurt having our highest more response, all the way down to cottage cheese in the bottom right, you could see having the lowest more response. So this is ranked kind of horizontally by that more number. And again, what we can take is this data to say, hey, we have more yogurt being purchased. Let's look at that 26% of the consumers in the state that are purchasing more yogurt. Let's take full advantage of knowing who they are demographically and where they live geography-wise, and we can now deploy any type of campaigns to reach them. If I now look at our generations, and I take those who responded more, so this is just the more response in the past 12 months, that would now look at ranked vertically, and across horizontally, you can see our generations. So the great news here is that the 2 generations, Jacob, that you guys and your team are targeting, the Gen Zs and the millennials, they have a lot of bold in that vertical. And you could see that milk from a cow, it's 17% of the state residents are buying more, but 27% of Gen Zs are buying more in the past year. That's incredible. 24% of millennials. Not as high as Gen Zs, but certainly that 24% of the population millennials, way higher than the 27. So all good news, because almost every single dairy product on here, we see a bold underneath the Gen Zs and the millennials. We decided if somebody bought by frequency, we would ask them what brands, because our goal here in your work was, hey, let's try to see if we can get some of the statewide producers to show up in this research. And plus, we want to know what brands consumers are looking at when they're going to the store. So we asked what brands of milk, and you can see the response. I'm focusing on our Gen Z and millennial population. This is ranked. And what you see in that bold, that very first bold there, Jacob, is a roll-up of all of the New York dairy farms that we got responses. So I did an aggregate, and man, that's a pretty strong number there behind that store house brand number that you see specifically. If you look at the market or the state, you could see that we're number 2. But now look at Gen Zs and millennials. If I were to re-rank by those 2 groups, you could see that the roll-up would actually have a higher ranking than the store brand. Super impressive. Again, those are sample sizes high enough, Jacob, that we can take anybody who's purchasing milk from a dairy farm in New York, that brand, and we can tell you what they look like demographically. We can put them on a map. We can tell you how they're consuming some of the media that we're asking. So again, don't hesitate to do that deeper dive into some of these responses that you see here. I wanted to look at this by our retail trading zones. If you remember, New York City has our largest population in central, western, and upstate. So our lowest population will be all the way on the far right-hand side. And I'm just pulling together now just the New York dairy and the roll-up. So you can see where our indexes are. It's really western and upstate where we're getting those indexes, which kind of makes sense to me. Our area of opportunity, not a significant under index though, Jacob, is 21% of New York purchasing from a New York dairy farm or from that brand, let's say from a New York dairy brand. I also wanted to kind of focus a little bit on the bottom part of this because I feel like, you guys have been also asking us to do some research on branding, right? And listening to the meetings, should the New York dairy have a brand? And if somebody's telling me they have no clue what brand milk they buy, boy, what an opportunity to brand New York dairy, right? So it's like a great opportunity when someone has no clue what kind of milk they're buying. We did the same questions and I could run the same lines of slides. I wanted to be respectful of your time today. So we asked what brands of yogurt, what brands of cheese, and what brands of ice cream. Those are the 4 branded questions that we asked. So I'm just giving you statewide responses here. And I will tell you, these are probably, if I were sitting in your shoes right now, would say, hey, I would definitely want to do deeper dives into these brands of yogurt and cheese and also ice cream because, man, look at the national brands, how strong they are. And so good opportunity for us, first and foremost, if there's any connection from New York Dairy to Chobani. We can now say that nearly half of the residents are buying that brand of yogurt. And so there's a good story there for us if we want to do that deep dive. Here's cheese. And again, if you look, the store brand has the 3rd highest share tied with Land O'Lakes. So it's the big box kind of producers that are showing up in these questions, a really good opportunity for us to kind of really focus on if we brand, is there a connection to purchases? And lastly, ice cream. Breyers, Ben & Jerry's, Turkey Heel, Friendly's, all brands that, not living in New York, I know those brands. And then the store brand comes in at number 5, but pretty much strong players at the top with very significant share numbers as far as purchases. Same thing here. If we have the ability to kind of brand a connection, we may have the ability to move purchases. When we talked to NIAC, I believe this was a NIAC question for you, Jacob. It was like, tell us what you consider to be healthy foods. So we really kind of went on those lines of questioning. And so we gave them a list, the respondents a list, and we were able to get a ranker. So that makes sense that vegetables would have the highest share here. But look at yogurt, milk, and cheese showing up very strong. 70% of the population of the residents in New York, they say that milk is healthy. And cheese, 56%, but yogurt at almost 80%. That's pretty significant. Again, This data can be run through a number of different demographics or household size, whatever information would be important for your team to have to present. Just let me know and I can pull those follow-throughs for you. So this would be an example. I took Gen Zs and millennials and I said, hey, is this a healthy? And you could see the baseline would be the blue bar here, Jacob, and then anything that would be over it be over index, anything under it be under index. So you could see our 2 generation groups, Gen Zs and millennials, slightly under indexing the New York State average for those dairy products being healthy. So although you guys are targeting them and doing a great job in reaching and branding, I think we still have an opportunity to continue that process.
Understanding purchase drivers for that group, what might be smart for us to be communicating better about.
Absolutely. And then the maps of where they live. And then, just if we're going to target on sending, campaigns or focusing our campaigns there, we know where the majority of that population resides. We can help you with that.
For sure. Which I think is probably a good thing to emphasize for anyone watching. Like really, what's so powerful about this research, like Jim just said, is that an insight like this can really help us move directly to where does it make sense to activate and with what messages. So we can basically layer, hey, we're under indexing here. Maybe there's an opportunity to increase purchasing for milk, yogurt, cheese. Where are the densest populations where we should be distributing advertising? What messages are going to best resonate? Where we can directly connect the dots on a digital activation that it would hopefully be the most impactful.
Absolutely. We also wanted to know what healthy attributes are. And so this question is single mention, Jacob. We asked, tell us which of the following descriptions, if it was included on a label, would most associate with being healthy. I love this question. I'm so glad you guys encouraged us to put this in the survey. So of the New York State residents, you could see not a huge kind of majority response, but organic is at the very top with all natural. But look what happens when we look at our generations. 22% of millennials say organic is going to ring true with them. So here we go. If we start branding, or if we're connected and we got any point of sale, these are the areas that we want to focus. Or content. If we're going to run content on a platform, we want to make sure that we're utilizing organic if we're targeting millennials, because that is the only over-indexing attribute.
Yeah. Talk about search terms, caption writing, positioning of ad copy, all of this stuff, super, super relevant. So that's great.
Yeah, it makes total sense that Gen Zs would have some of the highest indexes in high protein, reduced calories, because they're young, they're single, they're probably active, they're probably working out, they're probably they care about the protein intake, all those types of things. So again, we have a Gen Z campaign, same type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Which is good to see that you might have options for communication beyond just an organic farm. Hey, there's still opportunity with protein, other ways to get through to that, to make that message resonate,
For sure. All right. Again, these are some of the questions I saved for last because I love all the responses and opportunities that you guys have with the New York dairy farmers. We asked, how important is the dairy products like milk, cheese, or yogurt you buy at the store comes from New York dairy farms? This is incredible. There's your responses. We took this times the kids under 11 in the household and the kids 12 to 17 in the household. Look at these over indexes with those households with kids in very important. So it's very important there's a connection between the purchase and the New York dairy farmers.
Yeah. People want to know where it came from. Supply chain transparency. I mean, that hits on some really cool purchase drivers where bringing that New York brand more to the front could be a really interesting opportunity.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, when you look at this data just in the red, statewide residents, the vast majority of the responses said it's very important or somewhat important. So if we were to group just important responses together, it'd be significant.
Significant, very significant. Cool.
So I wanted to focus on the Gen Zs too. Look at that under index and very important. So it's our goal to not only show you all the positive things, but the areas of opportunity. And again, it's with those Gen Zs. So how do we make a connection with the Gen Z population, near 2 million residents in the state? That is part of our focus in making sure that there is an importance connection. Now they're almost at par with somewhat important, but their over index would be down at the bottom here with that not important at all. And again, younger consumers, maybe not as concerned, but certainly an opportunity because they're going to grow into that older population, have kids, they're going to build a family. So I feel like leading with the Gen Zs and trying to get them connected to the importance.
Mm-hmm.
Nice over-index with millennials.
Yeah.
We then asked, would you more likely buy products supporting New York dairy farmers? The question is, if you were aware that the dairy products supported local dairy farmers, would you be more likely to buy those companies' dairy products? And man, look at these numbers. The four groups that we've been looking at, the Gen Zs, the millennials, the kids under 11 and 12 to 17, our base average, almost 70% of consumers in the state said that they would more likely buy products if they knew. Yep. The only under index is the Gen Zs. And that last slide I just showed to you is a reason why, right? They don't kind of see that as being important. So making that connection with Gen Zs and then totally putting topspin on the next three demographics would be important.
100%.
Almost 80% of households with kids under 11, if there were a connection, they'd buy that product. That's super important that we make that connection.
Huge opportunity.
Again, I believe this is NIAC. They wanted to know just overall perceptions of dairy products. And so we asked, what's your perception of milk, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream? There's your responses. This is important to know. There aren't many negative responses on here. When you look, the full left-hand side of this slide are all positive. You get some negatives when you get to the right-hand side, and it's upset stomach. All of them are less than 10%, except that too much fat. So really good perception of dairy products that we mentioned in this question. Look, this question could be run through 1,000 different, types of demographics and groups, but also we can look at those that gave us a negative perception demographically. We can look at those who gave us kind of the high perceptions in calcium and strong bones. We can look at them demographically. Any way that you want to chip chop up a survey question like this, you let us know. Then we went straight at the dairy farmers and said, what's your perception of New York dairy farmers? And this is awesome. 62% of the population of the state gave us a positive perception. And really that other green part of the pie, neither positive or negative, that's probably our area of opportunity. In research like this, if I were with a car dealer, that would be low-hanging fruit, Jacob. So the quarter of the population that's on the fence, that's who we can move.
Yep, exactly.
And then making that connection. So this next question would be an opportunity, but also an example of how we make a connection. So this is a long question, but we basically made the connection between the New York dairy farmers and Cornell University. We described it as at the Cornell Dairy Center of Excellence. They strive to improve all facets of dairy systems, addressing environmental sustainability issues, animal welfare. It goes on to talk about that connection and that partnership. We then say, now that you're aware of this partnership, what is your perception? And look at the responses. 58% of statewide residents says, I have a more positive perception of the New York dairy farmers. 20%, we moved from that negative to positive.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome, because another great thing about this is that when we've built out the NewYorkDairy.co website, which anyone listening, we'd love for you to check out, NewYorkDairy.co, that's a CO, in our about page. We've got a great spot where we're doing some communication around Cornell's Milk Quality Improvement Program, around NIAC as two of our main partners to help build this brand. So seeing that communication can resonate when put in front of people is very exciting.
Yeah, and it's research like this that, I could remember way back when we first started this process, the word collaboration and the word, let's make sure partners are using resources that other partners have. This is totally a slide that I can see kind of hammering that home, Jacob. So I'm glad you guys, again, encouraged us to kind of switch up the survey a little bit this year. So if I take those households with kids and the households with kids by age ranges, less than 11, 12 to 17, you could see we moved the needle even more in the post-perception. So making sure we're branding, but also branding partnerships would be real important to me. Man, that households with kids 12 to 17, nearly 70% said that they have a more positive perception. All right, so your follow-through. A deeper dive into any of the new research that I just shared with you, Jacob, any crosstabs, maps, demographics, anything that you want to see, you let me know, or any of the partners. Trending data. So some of our key trending data that we have in consumption and perception and, awareness, we still have that trending data. And remember, we have 2 previous surveys that we can now trend into this year's survey, so we can provide that. And by the way, I'll be pulling those together that you'll have access to share with any of the partners and the DPO. We can demographically profile any of the results that you see there, as long as sample size is high enough. I'll keep an eye on that for you. The mapping is available to anybody, so we can map any of those responses. And then we have a couple of key media questions that we ask. If anybody wants to focus on that, we could pull that.
For sure. Yeah, and a call to action. If you're watching this and you have and any of this spurred thoughts, ideas, questions, please get in touch with me. We would be happy to work on slicing some information for you and making this packageable so it could be used for you as well.
Great.
This is all super great, Jim, and I'm excited to see how so much of this coincides with a lot of the work we've been doing on bringing the New York dairy brand to life this year. Would love anyone watching to check us out on social. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, New York Dairy. We're the blue brand with the white and yellow words. Would love for you guys to tune into what content we're working on. And thank you so much for the time, Jim. Really appreciate it.
All right, man. Thank you.